Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camila Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camila Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
the nose to the left, 348.
Pensioners will now freeze to death this winter after Labour scrapped the winter fuel payment.
Absolutely hate the winter. Absolutely hate the winter. The arthritis is badly affected by the very, very cold weather.
53 gutless Labour MPs abstained, only one voted against Sir Keir, so will Starmer and Reeves have blood on their hands? Plus...
Keir Starmer, I am. I'm a big Labour...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Big Labour supporter?
Out with the old, in with the new. It's been too long anyway, I think.
Smoking cannabis outside the prison gates as Labour let the lags out. Are they on the side of criminals? Also... Your tax money could go towards Germany sending illegal migrants to Rwanda. The Germans also closed their borders to stop Islamist terrorism. Why can't we just do the same? And...
the result of that, Mel Stride is eliminated from the contest.
Mel Stride is out. The final four battle it out to be the next Tory leader. Robert Jenrick leads the race and...
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
It's Trump versus Harris live on GB News at 2 a.m. We preview it. On my panel this evening is columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, the glorious return of ex-Tory Deputy Chairman Jonathan Gullis, and a first-timer on my show anyway, Labour activist Susie Stride. Oh, and can you spot the terrifying thing wrong with that aeroplane, anybody? OK, get ready, Britain. Here we go. Sir Keir Shiver and Rachel freeze as Labour sentenced the elderly to death. Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines just after 9 o'clock. Millions of pensioners will lose winter fuel payments after the Conservative motion to stop Labour's plan to slash the payments was defeated.
8. The nose to the left, 348.
A total of 53 Labour MPs abstained on the vote, while Labour MP John Trickett was the only rebel. The Prime Minister's defended the cut, calling it a tough decision needed to tackle a £22 billion deficit. But critics, including some Labour MPs, warn it could force millions of pensioners to choose between heating and eating. Despite the backlash, the government insists the cuts are necessary to secure the foundations of the economy. Now, former Cabinet Minister Mel Stride has been knocked out of the Conservative leadership race after receiving just 16 votes.
Mel Stride is eliminated from the contest, and The following four candidates.
The former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, finished top with 33 votes, with Kemi Badenoch second on 28, while James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat both got 21 votes each from Tory MPs. In other news, thousands of prisoners could be placed in taxpayer-funded hotels as more than 1,700 inmates walk free today in an effort to cut overcrowding in jails. There have been reported scenes of prisoners greeted by celebratory showers of sparkling wine as friends welcome their release outside prisons across the country. The Justice Secretary says probation staff have been authorised to use budget hotels if needed after concerns were raised about reoffending because some inmates are unprepared and face homelessness. Shaban Mahmood insists the early release scheme is temporary, giving the government time to reform the prison system. A coroner has ruled that there is no clear link between the appearance of a guest on the Jeremy Kyle show and his cause of death. 63-year-old Steve Diamond was found dead at his home in Portsmouth in May 2019, 7 days after taking part in the show. Hampshire coroner Jason Pegg said there was an absence of reliable evidence that the events on the show directly led to his death. And with just 8 weeks to go before the US election, Republican candidate Donald Trump and Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris are set to face off in their first and only debate tonight. Both candidates are neck and neck in key battleground states, but the debate could be critical for Harris, as polls suggest many voters still don't know much about her. Trump's team is urging him to focus on immigration and inflation, while Harris is expected to attack the former president's record on abortion and the Capitol riots. And you can watch all the action live overnight here on GB News with America Decides Trump versus Harris starting at 2 a.m. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Sir Keir Shiver and Rachel Freeze could have pensioners' blood on their hands this winter. They've cruelly cut the winter fuel payment to save around £1.4 billion. Money that's already been spent more than twice over so they could pay their union mates. This was the moment Labour officially consigned some pensioners to a freezing cold death.
Ayes to the right, 228. The noes to the left, 348.
And don't take my words for it that pensioners will die. Take the Labour Party's own report, OK? That revealed as many as 4,000 old people could be killed as a result. Just one Labour MP voted against it, John Trickett. 53 gutless cowards abstained, including Diane Abbott, apparently, of all people. They obviously feared losing the Labour whip more than the threat of elderly people shivering to death in their own homes this winter. The leader of the SNP in Westminster, Stephen Flynn, even said he saw a Labour MP punch the air, there you go, with delight when the winter fuel payment was scrapped. One of the elderly people who will be sitting in their living room wearing a coat, hat and gloves this winter is a 99-year-old World War II veteran. His name is Jim O'Dwyer. He flew 31 missions on Lancaster bombers during the war, only for Sir Keir Shiver and Rachel Freeze to rip his winter fuel payment away because he happens to have a small private pension. It's a disgrace. The sad fact is, this is a political decision. In my view, this is a punishment for the elderly because pensioners don't tend to vote Labour. But I tell you who is much more likely to vote Labour. Newly arrived refugees. Here's what the local council gives refugees from Afghanistan and Syria in Richmond and Wandsworth, OK? They pay landlords 6 weeks' rent in advance, they pay the council tax, they help furnish the property, they help them apply for all relevant welfare benefits and universal credit, helps them register with a GP, a dentist, even takes them to hospital appointments. They make regular home welfare visits, even takes the adults to the job centre. So all of that stuff. Now, I'm not saying that those people don't deserve support, but what I am saying is where's that level of support for our pensioners? Maybe that World War II veteran could nip round to a refugee's house to keep warm this winter. But honestly, what kind of country are we living in? Let's get the thoughts of my panel. We've got columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, got the former deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, Jonathan Gullis, and Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Esther, I'll start with you on this. Look, you know, this is, I think, a terribly bad look for Labour at the moment.
Well, it's a question of priorities. It's kind of like the adding VAT onto private school fees and to get maximum £1.7 billion, even though if you have a certain percentage, I think just 10% of privately educated kids going, public, that costs the state actually more. And there's, a deficit of over 4,000 teachers every year. It's the same case here. You're only saving £1.4 billion, but you're spending £5 billion on a broken asylum system, for example. And these are the things that people are struggling to understand. The argument here is that, 27% of pensioners have a net worth of over £1 million. But that could be the value of their house increasing, that they have no control over. So now should they sell their house or make themselves homeless so that they can pay for rising fuel payments? It's very hard when you attack or when you seem to cut the benefits of pensioners because they have no other means of earning an income. They're not young people, they're not mobile, they don't have that option. And the real issue that Labour has, and it's kind of sort of mimics the problem that Hollande had in France, which made him very unpopular, he's changing too much too quickly and demonstrating that his priorities are in the wrong place. And it's just bad news upon bad news upon bad news.
It's also the hypocrisy of him standing at the dispatch box and trying to slam Rishi Sunak for even thinking about doing this quite a while ago. But, Jonathan, do you think it's as simple as actually in this country you get a better deal if you're a refugee than you do if you're a pensioner?
Well, what I would say is that I think we have a social contract with pensioners at the end of the day. People who have contributed to the system have probably never taken out in many cases in this regard. And this is the first time they get a bit of something back, £300. In Stoke-on-Trent, 47,500 pensioners. In an area like Stoke-on-Trent, one of the most economically deprived parts of the country, people who won't have assets worth millions of pounds in terms of values of property and won't have millions of pounds sitting in bank accounts to be able to access, are about to lose £300 when energy prices
and sometimes
are
they
about
have
to go
be like
up.
£8 over the threshold to lose it. And
exactly.
It's very arbitrary. And the question is, where do your priorities lie? Because if these are the kinds of people that you're targeting, OK, then who's next on the chopping block?
And to back you up on the refugee and asylum situation, Stoke-on-Trent was the 5th largest contributor to the voluntary asylum dispersal scheme. That means we've had an awful lot of pressure on our social housing. We've got school places taken up with multiple teaching assistants required to speak in multiple different languages in order to be able to aid those students. We've obviously also having to pay to bus kids out of the city in order to be educated, all at the local council taxpayers' expense.
Exactly.
Pressure on the NHS as well, including that. Yes, in my opinion, it feels like if you come over to this country illegally, you get on there with your TikTok, waving your cash around in your 4 or 5-star hotel, everything funded, meals included. Yeah, if you're in a pensioner, we can't even do the decent thing with £300.
Is that fair then, Susie? I mean, is that a fair thing to say that at the moment in this country you're more likely to get your heating bills paid for and all of that stuff and get looked after if you have come here illegally as opposed to, we've got a World War II veteran there?
I mean, look, I looked at that article that was sent over and, look, what you're talking about there, those refugees, are a vast majority of them are those that in Afghanistan helped the British Army. So these are translators, these are people that helped the British Army, and if they were left there, they would have been assassinated, murdered, tortured, and they helped our army. And so, for me, I think, well, that's absolutely right. This is when you watch films in, 20 years' time and people say, how did your government just leave those people behind? Sorry, I don't want a country that leaves those people behind. And so when you look at that scheme that you were looking at, that targets refugees from Afghanistan that helped the British government, that if they were left in Afghanistan, would be murdered, would be tortured. So that's one thing. What's going on with pensioners? Ultimately, look, Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Johnny Reynolds, these guys did not come into politics to obviously cut, the winter fuel allowance to pensioners. I mean, no one wants to do that. But unfortunately, we're in a situation, I mean, I'm not an economist, and we keep hearing this number, 22 billion black hole, and everyone's rolling their eyes, and I understand that. I don't know the full ins and outs, but ultimately, the fact is we have a difficult economic situation here, so we can't do everything that we want to do, and we're having to do things that we don't want to do. And I think that's the situation we're in. But I think it's really important to put it in that wider context of saying, well, energy bills are going to be coming down.
But this is difficult, right? Because Labour still decided to borrow £3.1 billion to pay the unions.
Well, but this is the thing. I mean,
to lob $11 billion
train drivers are now going to be seeing more money than a junior doctor would even dream of making in 10 years, the first 10 years of their career. That's the kind of the reality is they're making choices. Yes, we're in a difficult situation, but when you make a choice that seems to have such a small sort of benefit to the country, that's when people get angry, because clearly your priorities are off whack. £1.4 billion in this scheme, 1.7 billion maximum potential for the VAT schemes. But what is the knock-on effect? Potentially, thousands of pensioners dying, right? Overwhelming the state's education and having more teachers fleeing. This is what people are questioning. Why are your priorities so out of line that could actually worsen the situation?
Well, this is what I would argue makes it look overtly political. So they've looked at the demographics. They've thought people who send their kids to private school, by and large, demographically, are probably not going to vote Labour. They've also looked at the age demographics. Those people probably do not vote Labour, and they've hammered them, and I do wonder whether or not they are lying about that. But, Jonathan, I will throw this over to you. You've been in a position, no doubt, where you've had to vote for things or abstain from things where you've not been particularly happy with it. I do understand that there is an element to that is just politics, right? However, 53 Labour MPs today abstained from this vote. Some of them had the gall to come out and say, oh, well, I had a pre-planned dental appointment. I'm sorry about that. I had a pre-planned dental appointment. I couldn't have voted with the government. Well, all right, but you're not saying you would have voted against it, are you? Just one singular Labour MP had the bottle to vote against this today. He'll lose the whip. Starmer would not have stripped the whip of 55 MPs. He couldn't have done that. So they actually just bottled it, didn't they?
Well, totally, at the end of the day. Look, yes, there are times you have to make difficult decisions. But as a politician, you also have to be able to look at your constituents in the eyes and take decisions that you think is right, something you can go to bed and sleep at night. And John Trickett himself has actually said he will sleep soundly tonight, knowing the decision that he's made. And I'm shocked that people like Diane Abbott, who were very vocal on these type of issues. In fact, even Labour MPs like Gareth Snell, who is the Stoke Central MP, in 2017 was busy holding up, I think GBNews actually has the graphic, which actually says on there that he signed it himself, not to cut the winter fuel payment back in 2017. So what happened to Gareth in 2017, and why is Gareth in 2024 willing to risk thousands of pensioners' lives in somewhere like Stoke-on-Trent Central? Again, one of the most economically deprived parts of the country. It is disgusting, it's shameful, it's callous, it's cowardly. And those Labour MPs had a real moment, and Jacob Rees-Mogg talked about it on his show yesterday. If you go in force and go in number, you can force your leader's hand, and there was an opportunity for them to act as one.
I'm sorry, I personally, just to say, I find it all a bit hypocritical, OK, because, not personal to anyone here, but I look at the Conservatives, and I sat there for 14 years, I've worked front line in one of the most poverty-stricken areas in East London, and I saw a Conservative government, destroying libraries, youth clubs, children's centres, the NHS. Lots of people died because Conservative MPs went and didn't vote to properly invest in the NHS, to properly invest, in lots of frontline services. And so, look, I understand. I agree. This is an uncomfortable decision. Do I think it's the right decision? I don't know. What would I do? I'm not a Labour MP, I'm not sure. OK, but we do have to make tough decisions. And just to say, if we weren't making this tough decision, we'd be having this conversation, we'd be saying, well, the Labour Party aren't facing up to reality, are they?
How is it
but what I think is really important to say, and what I would not allow the Conservatives to get away with, 14 years of, they went through those chambers, and the number of things they cut and the lives that were destroyed, even mental health. I'm sorry, but we've got a mental health crisis. And one of the reasons why we've got that crisis is because the decisions the Conservative government made.
I don't disagree with mental health point.
It's a tough decision when Labour does it, but it's criminal and destroying lives when the Tories do it. Surely it's just bad across the board. I don't see a hypocrisy here, because we're not arguing across party lines. We're talking about people, and we're talking about people's lives, and we're talking about people's livelihoods and how to foster a better, healthier society. If you're saying, oh, it's uncomfortable because Labour is making a tough decision, but when the Tories do it, it's criminal, then whose side are you really on?
Can I just say, sorry, it's only hypocrisy when you've got Conservatives saying, oh, no, this is terrible. This is what you just did for 14 years.
Let's talk about the hypocrisy of something like Stoke-on-Trent, which is Labour built a PFI hospital that takes £20 million a year from the front line and has actually not seen any improvement in health outcomes. When a Labour council has decided to close libraries, when actually the Conservatives have refurbished and reopened them, somewhere like Tunstall Town Hall, for example, when it's the Conservatives that secured £56 million for the Levelling Up Fund, more investment into our high streets, into our city, than secured under any Labour MP, Labour council and Labour government in history. Labour allowed Stoke-on-Trent to rot. not.
I think
they only got back
yeah.
in because voters sat at home or went to reform. And I promise you this, will take back the city.
Can I just say, you're always going to have an example of where, OK, the Conservatives built one library, well done.
Fine.
The fact is, across this country, we built the hospitals, we built the schools. And there isn't a debate there. I do agree with you on PFI. I thought that was very
Right, look, now, thank you very much. It's a lively start, and it's a cracking way to kick off the show. A spokesperson for Richmond and Wandsworth Council said Richmond Council provides support as part of the resettlement scheme established by the government for Afghan, Syrian and Ukraine sanctuary seekers. The funding for this support is provided by the government for these cohorts. It's a private rented scheme and properties are put forward through the generosity of our residents and by working with local landlords. Yes, OK. The argument, I think, still stands as to whether or not we do treat refugees better than we are currently treating pensioners. But still to come, Camila Harris and Donald Trump go head-to-head for the first time in just under 2 months before the country decides. Former trade advisor to Bush and Bill Clinton, Steve Gill, joins me later to discuss what we can expect. But next, former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Nick Hardwick, he's going to go head-to-head with political commentator Jess Gill on whether Labour have chosen to make our streets less safe. They've let the lags out today, haven't they? They made a lot of crims very happy. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A furious online debate has been sparked after, well, let's just say a rather large man, I mean, he really was big, was snapped trying to fit into his seat on the plane.
It's led to some to ask whether obese passengers should have to pay for extra plane seats so they don't inconvenience others.
Some say, though, that's cruel. Stratford-upon-Avon. And the director of All About Obesity, Sarah LeBrock, who's in beautiful Harrogate. Good to see you both this morning. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, we've had this debate before with Steve and I, to be fair, and I think it's one of those things where planes are just not fit for purpose anymore. So people's bodies have been growing over the years. We know this, the obesity rates are increasing, etc. But what's happening to planes is the seats are decreasing in size. So they're just not fit for purpose and not fit for the population. So I think it's just one of these things where we need to be more empathetic to people, that they're trying to fit into an environment that isn't shaped for them at all. So I think we do need to kind of say, well, what's right here? Is it the person not being able to fit in the seat, or is it the seat not being fit for purpose for the person? And I think we need to really, look at things from that perspective as well. Instead of thinking the person's doing something wrong, how about the environment might be doing something wrong?
Steve?
It's not about blaming, but the message you can't put out, in my opinion, is that it's okay to be obese and don't worry about it. You see, what I'm saying here is free plane seats. If you're offering free plane seats, an extra seat, that's going to normalise obesity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. We're only on GB News. Is Labour on the side of criminals? It's time now for our head-to-head. Well, I asked that question because Labour have released onto our streets more than 1,700 prisoners due to the overcrowding crisis, which some are absolutely ecstatic about.
Everyone's been happy today. I'm sure coming out there, haven't they? There's been a lot of happy people faces in there. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you're grateful to Labour and you're grateful to the...
100%. Yeah. I'm voted Labour all my life.
Yeah.
Labour's the one.
Yeah, obviously. And here's the Justice Secretary justifying the government's actions.
If we had not done this, we faced courts unable to hold trials, police unable to make arrests, and a total breakdown of law and order. This is not the long-term solution. There is more that we must do, but it was the necessary first step that we had to take following the disgraceful dereliction of duty by the previous government.
Yeah. Just let that sink in how Orwellian that is, all right? In order to make you safer, we've had to release criminals. OK. But as a result of Labour's decision to do this, have they chosen to make our streets less safe? Let's have a little look, shall we? gbnews.com/your say is where you can get in touch, or at GB News on Twitter. Go and vote in our poll. Going head-to-head on this is the former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Nick Hardwick, and political commentator Jess Gill. Both of you, thank you very much. Well, look, where possible, I always try and do ladies first. So, Jess, I will throw it over to you first and foremost. Do you think Labour have chosen to make our streets less safe?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on, Patrick. I think Labour have absolutely chosen to make our streets less safe. I mean, time and time again, we see that Labour is willing to sacrifice the most vulnerable, and Conservatives for that matter as well. I don't want to let them off the hook. But the political class has chosen to sacrifice our most vulnerable for the sake of criminals in order to turn a blind eye, whether it because of inconvenience or because of political correctness. At the end of the day, why aren't we deporting the thousands of foreign nationals? Why are they in our prisons already? I think that's a much wiser move than just let prisoners on our streets. I think that's ridiculous. And as a young woman, I already don't feel safe on our streets. And this is just going to make it worse.
Yeah, no, a couple of very strong points there, I must say. Nick, I mean, loads of people's concerns are everyone can see this going badly wrong, right? You got those people there walking out of prison. One person, our reporter said, just sparked up an absolutely massive cannabis joint as soon as he was out of prison, just outside the gates. You've got bottles of champagne being popped there, you know. I mean, they're going to be back inside soon, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Labour Party, but I do think on this occasion they didn't have any alternative. One of the reasons is that the prison system is a complete mess. Right? What do you think happens when people leave prison like before today? 50% of those who serve sentences of less than a year reoffend within a year. 30%, about a third of all prisoners reoffend within a year. If you want to, it may be that prisons do keep people safe when prisoners are locked inside. But given that we let practically all of them out at some point, if we're not doing anything to address their behaviour while they're in prison, then when they come out, then people will be at risk. They are at risk, and we've got to sort the system out so we can try and reduce that.
OK, I suppose just the timing of it's quite interesting, though, because we're having to put people in hotels now, as in prisoners in hotels. Apparently, they'd not had time to tell the survivors of domestic abuse whether or not they're the perpetrator of the atrocity against them was even being released out. So it is a bit of a rush job, to say the least, isn't it?
It is a rush. I think it is a rush job. I think that most prisoners who committed domestic violence offences aren't being released early. But I think it is a rush job. I mean, it is. I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't have wanted to be in a position where it had to be done this way. But because the last government put off taking action, that's why we're stuck with it being such a rush job.
I will just cut across you there, because I understand, Nick, you're not deliberately and never would deliberately try to mislead anyone. I absolutely 100% get that. We were told that people were not going to be released through domestic violence abuses. Unfortunately, at least one of them that we know of has been, because he's gone on record, and he's actually only in prison for 3 weeks. He has 109 previous convictions, and apparently his partner was not told. So, you know, again, it's difficult to trust maybe what we're being told by our politicians there. But, Jess, you know, you look at those people coming out of prisons there and saying, yeah, I'm going to be a lifelong Labour supporter. One of them was a young drug dealer, for example. Now, OK, that might be a joke, and OK, maybe they're not going to be the most politically engaged people who actually bother to go to a polling station the next day. But there is something to be said, I think, for whether or not Labour are basically on the side of criminals here.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think this is just a slap in the face to victims, in all honesty. I mean, as a domestic violence victim myself, a survivor myself, I understand how hard it is to go in front of the court and go in front of, you know, speaking to people about your experience and having the courage to do that. And then to realise that the person who you've managed to get justice in putting them in prison is going to get an early sentence, is to let off the hook easily. I think that's absolutely disgraceful. And what does it say to the women and men as well, because men are victims of domestic violence as well? But what does it say to the victims? I think it shows that if you want justice in our society, if you want to be safe, either just walking across the streets and being a victim of sexual assault or being a victim of domestic violence in your own household, it is not a possibility, and the police and the justice system aren't going to do anything.
OK. Nick?
Well, at the moment, what's happening unforgivably to victims of domestic violence and rape is the perpetrator is stuck in a court's backlog for up to 2 years. And part of the reason for that backlog is that the prisons can't cope with people coming through the court system. So absolutely, victims have been let down, and victims have been let down because politicians, I think going back a long way of both parties, haven't made the tough decisions about matching the work that's required to the resources they've got. And so, like, victims, just be clear, victims of domestic violence are kept waiting up to 2 years for the trial that will see their perpetrator put behind bars. And the reason for that is that the prisons can't cope with the people.
But Nick, on that, we have, roughly speaking, around 10,400 foreign nationals in prison. That apparently equates to about 1 in 8 prisoners. Could we not just get rid of them and free up a heck of a lot of space, Nick?
I think we should send more foreign national prisoners back. I think we should send as many back as we can. I don't think that's going to be done within a few weeks. I hope that is something that the new government will address. Don't forget, though, it won't really help with the numbers problem, because, of course, there's lots of countries that want to send Brits who've committed offences abroad back here. So I think it would probably, in the long run, even itself out.
OK, interesting take, actually. I'd not particularly thought about that, I must say. Jess, I'll just give the final word to you on this. What would your message to Keir Starmer and anyone who's there in the Ministry of Justice be after we saw those people, you know, wandering out of prison gates today to be greeted by, you know, some of their counterparts, shall we say?
Yeah, I just want to comment that it's an absolute joke that the idea that prisons are overcrowded. Again, the reason why prisons are overcrowded is the fact that we've allowed foreign nationals. I don't think anyone who was born abroad should be in UK prisons. Why should the taxpayer have to pay for that? And also, maybe if the police and the justice system wasn't so focused on arresting people for sending mean tweets, maybe then they'd have more time to focus on actual victims.
OK, all right. Well, there we go. Look, both of you, thank you very much. I mean, it's proper head-to-head. It's exactly what we're after, so good luck to both of you. I hope to chat to you again very, very soon. That's the former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Nick Hardwick, there, and political commentator Jess Gill. Right, OK, all right. So what we're going to be covering next is Donald Trump and Kamala Harris going head-to-head in their first presidential debate. That's live on GB News overnight. So it's going to be from 2 a.m, as you can see on your screens there. Tom Harwood presents America Decides, Trump versus Harris, live from 2 a.m. How will he stay awake for that? So, who do you agree with? Have Labour chosen to make our streets less safe? That's in light of the debate we just had. Gareth on X says, the ones voting no are the prisoners who have been released. OK, fair enough. Barry says the Tories made the mess. No good blaming Labour for trying to sort it out. What other options were there if prisons are full and violent thugs need to be incarcerated? None. Barry, I will slightly push back on that, mate. We were able to get the Nightingale hospitals up and about pretty quickly, weren't we, during the pandemic? We were. I think most of them have stayed empty. You know, could we not do something similar for prisoners? I don't know, maybe it's a staffing issue, to be fair, but John says, it's shocking. I don't know how we will be able to sleep with all these criminals being let out. Well, quite. Your verdict is in. 89% of you think that Labour have chosen to make our streets less safe. 11% of you say they haven't. So, coming up, Germany announces an immigration crackdown just after Keir Starmer warned them about what's happened over here. Will they make the same mistakes as us? Editor-in-Chief from Brussels Report, Peter Klepper, joins me soon. Just to clarify on that, so Germany shut the borders, and they're also, apparently, going to be using facilities that the British taxpayer has built in Rwanda to deport people to Rwanda, all right? So, conceivably, we've paid to sort out Germany's migrant problem, but that's a classic of the genre, isn't it? Next, though, former trade advisor to Bush and Clinton, Steve Gill, joins me to talk about what we can expect from the presidential debate this morning. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. A cold spell of weather to come through the rest of this week. A particularly cold northerly wind will develop throughout the country overnight tonight, and that will bring with it some blustery showers as well. The air is coming from the Arctic, hence why it's quite so cold. We've got low pressure up to the north and east of the UK, so that's brought some very windy weather across northeastern areas of Scotland through this afternoon. That will move away to the east, though, overnight, and so it will turn a little bit calmer for these areas, but still quite a cold wind through much of the night and frequent showers across north and western areas. A bit more shelter further south and east, temperatures widely in the single figures. So it will be a chilly start to the day on Wednesday, but frost will be limited because we do still have quite a strong breeze around. And the winds will remain quite strong across northern areas of Scotland in particular. Some of these showers may start to fall as snow over parts of the Grampians as well, just over the highest mountains. That'll be the first snow we've seen in quite a few months. And some of the showers moving into northwestern areas of England, parts of Northern Ireland, could bring some hail, possibly some lightning and thunder. A drier start to the day, though, for more southern and eastern areas of the UK, but as we head towards lunchtime, cloud will develop further inland, and some of these showers could spread into parts of more southern and central areas of England, as well as eastern areas of Scotland into the afternoon. But I think the most frequent showers will continue, particularly across northwestern England, northern areas of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's going to feel cold as well. These are the maximum temperatures. Temperatures will feel closer to the single figures, though, with the strength of that northerly wind. Another chilly start to the day to come on Thursday. A frost potential as well, grass and air frost. And showers will be more frequent across more northern and eastern coasts as we head into Thursday afternoon. So a slightly drier day for some northwestern areas, but still some further showers to come. Looks a little bit drier and warmer by Friday, and turning a bit warmer into the weekend as well. Bye-bye.
Join me, Camila Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camila Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, the race for the White House cranks up a notch as Kamala Harris and Donald Trump go face-to-face or head-to-head in their first presidential debate this evening. Taking place at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, this will be the first time the pair have actually met with each other, and only the second time that they've been in the same room. So this follows the downfall of President Biden after his disastrous performance in the first debate.
with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Oh, gosh, remember that anyway. And now the pressure is on Harris to outperform her predecessor.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit. I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been.
Who doesn't love a yellow school bus, right? Can you raise your hand if you love a yellow school bus, right? The bus has Wi-Fi and even USB outlets next to every seat. That's good stuff. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
What is that laugh? Anyway, Harris is currently ahead of Trump in the national poll, supposedly, by a 2.8-point lead. But the stakes are high, and what can we expect from tonight? Joining me now to tell us a bit more is former trade advisor to Bush and Clinton, Steve Gill. Steve, I'm hoping you might be able to shed a little bit more light on me on this. I mean, the polls do vary. Is that accurate, then, that Harris is slightly ahead of Trump?
Not really. In fact, the latest New York Times Siena poll has Trump slightly ahead. Now, keep in mind, this is a poll that at the same time, 4 years ago, Joe Biden was leading by 10 in this poll. And you had Hillary Clinton leading by about 8 or 10 points at this time. And obviously, that's not how the results ended with that kind of number. Keep in mind also that this is really a patchwork quilt election. It's state by state. There's really about 8, maybe 9 states that are really in contention. Winning the national election doesn't matter.
All right.
You have to win state by state. And Harris's problem is that in these key battleground states, she slipped behind there, which puts, as you mentioned, the pressure is all on her in the debate tonight.
Well, talk to me about how we see this debate going, OK? Because, you know, Trump can be a bit hit and miss. Kamala Harris, I'll be honest with you, at times seems completely unhinged. So, I mean, how's it going to pan out?
Well, Putin finds her laugh endearing. That's why he's endorsed her in this presidential race with a tongue firmly planted in cheek. I think both of these candidates have to act against their default setting. Trump has to be very disciplined, no matter what the question is, no matter how they try to poke him or get under his skin, whether it's the moderators or her. He has to constantly talk about inflation, the economy, and illegal immigration, and be very disciplined and not try to throw punches and get too aggressive. Harris, on the other hand, has to be against type. She has to appear coherent, smart, and likable. I'm not sure she can achieve that. So both of them are going to have to outdo whatever they've done as their standard style.
I mean, Trump, I think, has got a relatively easy gig in the sense that, aside from, you know, her not necessarily always being the most coherent person, she's technically in charge of the border. And we think we've got border issues over here. Oh, my gosh. What is going on with you guys beggars belief. And also what the Biden administration has done. I mean, there are some states in America now where if you are an illegal immigrant, basically, you can get a 0% mortgage. You can get people who will help you pay your deposit for you. You can just get shoved onto the housing ladder. I mean, we think we've got it bad here. Over in America, what our Biden administration has done when it comes to illegal immigration is absolutely insane.
Well, cell phones, cash. I mean, apparently you can eat all you can at the chicken, cat, and dog buffet in Ohio. I mean, crazy stuff that's happening with these illegal immigrants. And again, you're seeing it in England, you're seeing it in Italy, you're seeing it in Germany. Everybody's trying to react to it. And I think that foreshadows the importance of illegal immigration in this particular campaign. And we'll see how much it comes up in this debate.
Trump could lose it. Like, you know, he could. He can be a bit hit and miss. He maybe would lose his rag, I don't know, and the optics of that could be quite bad for him. Is it not fair to say that, actually, you know, with Kamala Harris coming in as the kind of newbie replacing Joe Biden, I suppose, there is an element of momentum there. People are questioning, not to the same degree as was the case with Joe Biden, of course, people are questioning whether or not Trump is the same man he was, 8 years ago?
Well, I think in that first debate, because he was subdued, because he wasn't aggressive, people took that as sort of a weakness, although that was the right strategy. Let Joe Biden talk because it showed that he wasn't capable. I think the pressure, again, to use a sports analogy, if I'm playing soccer against Man United and I'm the underdog, there's no pressure on me. The pressure is on them to beat me. With Kamala Harris, though, because people don't know her, she has all the pressure. She has to avoid any own goals, and she has to be aggressive without kind of overreaching. Find opportunities and take advantage, but don't try to overdo what you can do. I think that's the same for both of them.
I think she's going to go after him, isn't she, on the legal issues and on January the 6th. I think that's what she's going to go after for. So he should have answers for both of those things, really. So you would assume that he does. I mean, just final point, actually. How does the quotes unquote insurrection, which, you know, from some of the clips I've seen, I don't want to diminish some of the genuine wrongs that happened there, but from some of the clips I've seen, there were aspects of that did look a bit more like a guided tour. What is Trump? You know, is this still a big thing for the Americans, or is it just stuff that whingy Democrats moan about?
I think it motivates Democrats, but I don't think it's moving voters. And I think that's a lot of what these attacks on Trump don't achieve. Some of them are outright lies, claiming that he supported white supremacists in Virginia, you know, claiming that he is going to ban abortion. Those are things they make up to attack Trump, and I don't think they're moving the dial. I think women are the key, and I think the question is, can Kamala convince women that the issue of abortion is more important than when women are still the main ones that go to the grocery store, when they see the price of eggs and bread and roast beef, when they go past the gas stations and they're taking their kids to soccer practice, the prices are twice what they were. If Trump can keep coming back and hammering that, that's where he can win women's votes.
Steve, thank you very much. Absolute pleasure. And no doubt you will be absolutely locked into the debate later on. So you take care. Steve Gill there, the former advisor to Bush and Clinton. Now, don't forget, you can watch Donald Trump and Kamala Harris go head-to-head in their first, and I believe only, presidential debate. It's live on GB News overnight tonight. The one and only Tom Harwood. He's presenting America Decides Trump versus Harris live from 2 a.m. Coming up, as Labour unleash more than 1,700 prisoners onto our streets, were the 10,000 foreign criminals who are locked up just given a free pass? Why aren't we deporting them to make space for other criminals? I'll debate that with my panel soon. But next, Germany's announced an immigration crackdown due to their Islamist threat, and they're implementing a Rwanda plan of their own, which we have paid for, by the way. Editor-in-Chief of the Brussels Report, Pieter Klepp, joins me right after the break. Stay tuned.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
I'm now joined by a truly inspirational man. He's an endurance runner, Ben Smith. 401 marathons in just 401 days for mental health and well-being. He was spurned on after being bullied as a child, was able to raise a whopping £250,000. I'm pleased to say that he joins me now. Right, so this was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yes.
How long ago was it?
Well, we're coming up to, I think next year, roughly about 10 years since we started it. In 2026 will be 10 years since we finished.
So when did you run the marathons?
So it was between 2015 and 2016, over the course of 401 days, all around the UK.
What kind of madness was that?
Oh, it was an adventure, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, on day one when we started in Bristol, never ever thought that the project would ever become what it became. But over the course of the 401 days, we ran with 13,500 people within 8 miles of everywhere on the British mainland, from Land's End to John O'Groats. So,
and that was the journey from Land's End to John O'Groats?
Yeah. We covered so many different communities around the UK because I suppose the reason why I was doing it was to raise so much money for 2 anti-bullying charities that we wanted to include people in that. And yeah, I got to run in some amazing places.
I bet you did. What would you say is a beautiful place? I mean, the whole country, I love this country, but there are some outstanding, beautiful areas around. What would you say?
Oh, definitely.
Where's the best place that you run?
Well, I think I've got a few, but I think I would say probably the Highlands of Scotland.
I knew you would say someone like
that. Yeah, just the kind of vastness of it, the dramaticness of it. I remember running up and down one of the paths in the Highlands near Glencoe and coming face to face with a wild stag. So it was quite scary.
What did it do?
Oh, it did nothing. It did absolutely nothing. It was quite used to people because of the path.
What are you doing here? This is my house.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Okay, welcome back. So, the German government, has announced plans to take control of its land borders in what it claims is an attempt to tackle illegal immigration, particularly from the Middle East. So, starting on September the 16th, for an initial period of 6 months, the country will restrict access and increase powers to reject entries at its borders, despite being a central participant of the EU's Schengen area. Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said, "We are strengthening internal security and continuing our hard line against irregular migration." Right, first off, you never had a hard line against irregular migration. Angela Merkel set the rot into Europe a while ago. And also, it's not irregular migration, is it? It's illegal immigration. But anyway, the announcement comes just weeks after Keir Starmer made an official visit to Germany to warn Chancellor Olaf Scholz about the risk of a rise in the far right and encourage him to be progressive. So just the other day, the German administration suggested it might send illegals to Rwanda to be housed in facilities that you, the British taxpayer, has already paid for. Wunderbar. So despite Germany being not only in the EU, but also a mainland European nation in the Schengen-free movement area, it seems that the German government is doing what we ourselves have failed to achieve, and that is presumably just going to ignore the ECHR. Right, well, is Britain's failure to address illegal immigration turning us into an international laughingstock? I'm joined now by the editor-in-chief of the Brussels Report, Peter Klepper. Peter, thank you very, very much. How is it that Germany can close its borders and potentially deport people to Rwanda in a way that we clearly can't hear?
Well, there's a number of things. So first of all, Germany has been implementing limited border checks after 2015. This was in the context of the big migration crisis. So this is nothing new. These checks were all in all quite limited. Also during COVID, you had checks that were a bit more stringent. So this is mostly a measure that will not do much, but is meant to send a signal ahead of the state elections in the German state of Brandenburg, where the populist right-wing AfD party is also likely to do well. Now, if you're talking about Rwanda, well, basically Rwanda should be called Australia because this is the Australian approach. Australia is the only Western country that has successfully for 2 decades now managed to stop illegal migration. And despite this, other Western policymakers are unwilling to copy the model, even if Australia
Could I just ask you on that, Peter? Sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's an important point, which is that one of the reasons why we've been so reluctant to do it is because we've had a ready army of lawyers who have told us that this is illegal, it's against everyone's human rights. You couldn't possibly go against a ruling of the ECHR either. Well, are the Germans not receiving this kind of stuff now? Would they just ignore the ECHR? What's going on there?
Well, surprise, surprise. It all depends how you interpret the law. So one of the leading migration experts in Belgium, the former Constitutional Court president, he actually thought that the UK Rwanda approach was perfectly in line with the European Convention for Human Rights. Basically depends whether you consider this case Rwanda safe for asylum seekers or not. And to be fair, you could take two interpretations. But if you could find a place where people are safe, there's nothing wrong with outsourcing asylum processing over there, outside of the territory. This is what Australia has done. It has destroyed the business model of these human smugglers. I looked at the figures, 30,000 people, around 30,000 people have died in the Mediterranean Sea, while Australia has been implementing its system, a system that was supported by both the right and the left. And, you could still say we want a lot more migrants, we want a lot less migrants. That's actually not, it's not about being generous or not. It's about, once you've set a number, once you've set the conditions under which people can enter, this is the only way to actually then apply that democratic choice.
And just on that, Peter, I'm very keen to try to understand what Britain's reputation is like amongst our European friends when it comes to illegal immigration. And how do people, whether it's in Germany or around mainland Europe, think that we are dealing with this at the moment when we've had however many people coming across the channel, 8,000, I think, this year. We're putting them in hotels, we're buying council housing for them, all of this stuff. I don't know, what's the view of us from the continent?
Depends who you ask. Of course, the left would describe, let's say, the previous UK government as Brexiteers that were experimenting with this heartless Rwanda schemes, ignoring completely the whole story about Australia. But the right, and these are more and more governments in Europe, would actually be more positive. In April, ahead of the European Parliament elections, there were up to 19 EU governments that were exploring outsourcing of asylum processing. Now, to be fair, many of them said we don't want to exactly copy the Rwanda model, but at heart, they wanted to do the same. Of course, after the election, we haven't heard so much about that anymore, and now the German government is coming with this very limited border checks, which won't do much. You need to basically negotiate with a country or a territory outside of your own territory. That's the only way.
Sorry, very quickly, very finally on this then. Is Germany going to be having to send people back into other neighbouring EU countries? I mean, what's that going to do for relations with the countries around them?
Well, that's of course not going to happen. Austria, not Australia, Austria has already said that they will refuse any migrants that Germany would push back. And we have the so-called Dublin arrangement in the EU, which requires the likes of Bulgaria, Greece, Italy to take back people that have originally registered for asylum there.
It's not going to
happen. That doesn't really happen.
It's not going to happen. Look, Peter, thank you very much. Great to have your time this evening, and all the best to you. There's Peter Clapper there with the Brussels Report, Editor-in-Chief. Coming up, the Tory leadership race saw another candidate eliminated today, Mel Stride, who was booted out of the race by fellow MPs. Robert Jenrick, he tops the bill. One of his supporters joins me soon, but next...
You're grateful to Labour and you're grateful to the...
100%.
Yeah.
I've Labour, I'm Labour, vote Labour all my life.
Yeah.
Labour's the one.
We have 10,500 foreign criminals currently behind bars. That's 1 in 8 people in our prisons. 1 in 8 people in British prisons were not born here. Instead of deporting those, no, we'll just let some thugs out, won't we, to roam the streets. Should we not just be implementing deportation to free up a little bit of space? Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. A cold spell of weather to come through the rest of this week. A particularly cold northerly wind will develop throughout the country overnight tonight, and that will bring with it some blustery showers as well. The air is coming from the Arctic, hence why it's quite so cold. We've got low pressure up to the north and east of the UK, so that's brought some very windy weather across northeastern areas of Scotland through this afternoon. That will move away to the east, though, overnight, and so it will turn a little bit calmer for these areas, but still quite a cold wind through much of the night and frequent showers across north and western areas. A bit more shelter further south and east, temperatures widely in the single figures. So it will be a chilly start to the day on Wednesday, but frost will be limited because we do still have quite a strong breeze around. And the winds will remain quite strong across northern areas of Scotland in particular. Some of these showers may start to fall as snow over parts of the Grampians as well, just over the highest mountains. That will be the first snow we've seen in quite a few months. And some of the showers moving into most northwestern areas of England, parts of Northern Ireland could bring some hail, possibly some lightning and thunder. A drier start to the day, though, for more southern and eastern areas of the UK. But as we head towards lunchtime, cloud will develop further inland, and some of these showers could spread into parts of more southern and central areas of England, as well as eastern areas of Scotland into the afternoon. But I think the most frequent showers will continue, particularly across northwestern England, northern areas of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's going to feel cold as well. These are the maximum temperatures. Temperatures will feel closer to the single figures, though, with the strength of that northerly wind. Another chilly start to the day to come on Thursday. A frost potential as well, grass and air frost, and showers will be more frequent across the more northern and eastern coasts as we head into Thursday afternoon. So a slightly drier day for some northwestern areas, but still some further showers to come. Looks a little bit drier and warmer by Friday, and turning a bit warmer into the weekend as well. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camila Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camila Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight. Smoking cannabis outside the prison gates, drinking booze, joking about reoffending.
You're grateful to Labour and you're grateful to the...
100%.
Yeah.
I've Labour, I'm vote Labour all my life.
Yeah.
Labour's the one.
Labour's let the lags out, haven't they? Are they on the side of criminals? Also tonight...
The nose to the left, 348.
53 gutless Labour MPs abstained. Only one voted against it. Will Starmer and Reeves have blood on their hands over the winter fuel payment cut? Plus...
The result of that, Mel Stride is eliminated from the contest.
Mel Stride is out, not that many of us had ever heard of him before the election anyway. The final four battle it out to be the next Tory leader. Robert Jenrick currently leads the race. And I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages with columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, ex-Tory Deputy Chairman Jonathan Gullis and Labour activist Susie Stride. Oh, and can you spot the terrifying thing that's wrong with this aeroplane? I will tell you how that happened. Get ready, Britain, here we go. How long before one of Starmer's convicts kills someone? Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wenslow with your headlines just after 10 o'clock. Millions of pensioners will lose winter fuel payments this year after an attempt to block the cuts failed in Parliament today. A total of 53...
The nose to the left, 348.
A total of 53 Labour MPs abstained on the vote, while Labour MP John Trickett was the only rebel. The Prime Minister's defended the cut, calling it a tough decision needed to tackle a £22 billion deficit. But critics, including some Labour MPs, warned it could force millions of pensioners to choose between heating and eating. Despite the backlash, the government insists the cuts are necessary to secure the foundations of the economy. Former Cabinet Minister Mel Stride has been knocked out of the Conservative leadership race after receiving just 16 votes.
Mel Stride is eliminated from the contest, and
The former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, finished top with 33 votes, with Kemi Badenoch second on 28, while James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat both got 21 votes each from Tory MPs. In other news, thousands of prisoners could be placed in taxpayer-funded hotels as more than 1,700 inmates walk free today in an effort to cut overcrowding in jails. There have been reported scenes of prisoners greeted with a celebratory shower of sparkling wine as friends welcome their release outside prisons across the country. The Justice Secretary says probation staff have been authorised to use budget hotels if needed after concerns were raised about reoffending because some inmates are unprepared and face homelessness. Shabana Mahmood insists the early release scheme is temporary, giving the government time to reform the prison system. Meanwhile, 31 people have been charged over last year's Cardiff riots, sparked by the deaths of teenagers Kyrie Sullivan and Harvey Evans. The two boys died in a crash involving an e-bike after being followed by a police vehicle. 27 face charges of riot, while 4 are charged with causing or threatening criminal damage. The defendants, aged between 15 and 53, are expected to appear at Cardiff Magistrates Court in the coming weeks. And with just 8 weeks to go before the US election, Republican candidate Donald Trump and Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris are set to face off in their first and only debate tonight. Both candidates are neck and neck in key battleground states, but the debate could be critical for Harris, as polls suggest many voters still don't know much about her. Trump's team is urging him to focus on immigration and inflation, while Harris is expected to attack the former president's record on abortion and the Capitol riots. And you can watch all the action live overnight here on GB News with America Decides Trump versus Harris starting at 2 a.m. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Why are we letting prisoners... Oh, gosh, I'll start that again. Why are we letting prisoners out early instead of just deporting foreign criminals? Today, 1,700 offenders were let out. There was a party atmosphere outside HMP Wandsworth. One of them walked out and immediately... got stuck into the champers, didn't he? Look at the state of that. I bet they're all voting Labour.
You're grateful to Labour and you're grateful for the...
100%. Yeah. I've voted Labour all my life.
Yeah.
Labour's the one.
And he's not the only one. A 20-year-old drug dealer is also saying that he's a lifelong Labour voter now. I'm not surprised. Having said that, forget the spliff and cheap fizzy wine at the prison gates. There's been a party atmosphere inside HMP Wandsworth recently after a prison guard was filmed having sex with an inmate while another looked on smoking something that looked suspiciously like cannabis. We are currently living in an Orwellian world where the Labour government is telling us that they are releasing criminals to make your streets safer.
We could see looters running amok, smashing in windows, robbing shops and setting neighbourhoods alight. In short, if we fail to act now, we face the collapse of the criminal justice system.
Right. So we're going to let them out. OK. All right. Do you remember when Jess Phillips stood up in Parliament and made a point out of reading all the names of domestic abuse victims?
Sabita Thanwani, Yasmin Begum, Shatira Bibi, Sherry Bruce, Helen Laurie, Emma Bailey, Ramona Stoyer, Alison Nelson, Susan Ferrance.
Well, today, domestic abuse victims are living in fear that their abuser has just been released. Now, one of those domestic abusers is reportedly Jason Hoganson. He attacked his ex-girlfriend in the street. It's not clear whether or not she's been informed of his release. Jess Phillips is going to need a longer list, isn't she? Again, this is a choice by Labour. There are roughly 10,400 foreign prisoners in jail. That is about 1 in every 8 prisoners, apparently. Now, this was a point actually raised in Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Secretary of State explain why, when there are some 10,000 foreign criminals blocking up space in our jails, why aren't they being removed and deported, simultaneously saving the British taxpayer billions of pounds every year and having the support of millions of British voters?
There'll be about 3,500 more prisoners released early in the coming weeks. It is as clear as day that some of these are going to go on and commit horrendous crimes. Labour has made gangsters, drug dealers, violent thugs, thieves and domestic abusers very happy today. Why not keep them banged up and deport the foreign criminals instead? Let's get thoughts from my panel on this tonight, then. I'm joined by columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow. We've got the former deputy chairman of the Tory party, Jonathan Gullis, and Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Esther, is the answer not just to deport the foreign crims?
Well, that would be the most common sense answer. But unfortunately, we don't have returns agreements for countries that have the highest number of offenders, mainly places like Afghanistan, which I don't personally agree with. I don't understand why we don't have a returns agreement with every country, because there's no reason to keep foreign criminals. But there's also the slight issue of technicality. So, for instance, it depends on how long your prison sentence is for you to actually be automatically deported. So there is, I think it's 3 years. If your prison sentence is under 3 years, you're not automatically deported. So those are for lesser crimes. My issue mainly was the probation service, because the probation service has been extremely underfunded. We know that recidivism rates are particularly high if the person in question has served less than a year's sentence. So is the probation service ready and prepared to actually keep an eye on these people so that they don't commit more crimes? I find it incredibly ironic that Jess Phillips is, who has been a staunch defender of women's rights, especially women who face domestic violence, and yet somehow she's supporting this move. I find that
bonkers. I mean, it just doesn't.
But it's mainly the probation service, because I don't think an extra 10% of their sentence would have made that much of a difference. Are these people going to commit crimes again?
Jonathan, and this does go back to the Tories as well. Why have we got so many foreigners in prison? Supposedly it's 1 in 8 foreign prisoners at the moment.
Well, look, we do need to deport and get these returns agreements, and with countries like Afghanistan, simply the Germans are actually deporting people, illegal migrants, back to Afghanistan. So why on earth we can't? It doesn't make sense to me. You can't play the ECHR card on that regard. Maybe the Human Rights Act is something that could be used in domestic courts in this country. But again, if that is something that is a blocker, then it's the act of Parliament to then
Do you really think the Labour Party is going to do that?
So I don't believe it, but I do believe the Tories have questions to answer. We were increasing sentences, rightly so, for horrific offences. We were not building the prison places along at the same time. And look, whilst I therefore hold my hand up as a member of the Conservative Party over the last 4.5 years, therefore bear some responsibility, there could have been Nightingale-style prisons built. We could have used disused army barracks. We could have used Bibby Stockholm-type situations. We did not have to get to the point where 1,700 today, and like you say, there's still another 3,000 to come down the line. We are going to see people go on to commit horrific crimes. We've already seen Sir Keir Starmer sign letters to stop foreign national offenders being deported, which kept the playing ground, and some of those people went on to commit further crimes like violent assault, like drug offences.
Hold on, but I think it's important to add a bit of context here. This early release scheme has been going on since 2007, since Gordon Brown. So yes, while the Tories do bear some blame, this has been a problem that's almost 20 years in the making. Why has no government got to grips with the fact that we don't have enough prisons, we're sentencing people longer, and we're not deporting enough foreign criminals?
The thing that I wonder whether or not Keir Starmer can live with on this is anyone can see that some of these people who've just got out now are going to go on and do some pretty horrible things. All right, the reoffending rate is massive. They're obviously pretty chuffed to be out and about. If one of those people goes out there and kills someone, how does Keir Starmer square that?
I mean, look, we're in a situation where our prisons are severely overcrowded. They don't actually have another option here. But I think there is a bigger picture which is really important, and I don't think it is just building more prisons. I mean, we've just been having this conversation. I don't want to use the term broken Britain, but there are lots of things about Britain that are broken and actually are not acceptable, and also not where we want the future of this country to be. And actually, I don't know if we want to build more prisons. Actually, I think we want to sort out some of these issues. Whether it is we want to make sure that, parents are getting more support, or kids that are born into homes where there's drug abuse or, big problems with mental health. Ultimately, that's not a good situation, but there's no point in penalising the kids for it. We need to make sure that there is early intervention and support. Pastoral care in schools, I can tell you, because I've worked in that sector, is poor, it's not well funded, you know, and what's really the optimistic thing here is there is hope. We can turn lives around. I've seen young people that should have gone to prison not go to prison. I've seen lives rehabilitated. I've seen kids that were mugging people become teachers.
Yeah.
You know, and this is possible. You know, like Jamie Oliver does his schools. And, you know, we sent one of them off to, you know, Jamie Oliver. And I think, I'm not trying to say, oh, it is a lovely, rosy picture, but actually there's an alternative future for Britain. And actually it's not... Building more prison places is important. Probation services being properly invested in is important.
Fine.
This is not just about the Conservatives, but I also think there's a wider and bigger picture here.
There is, but I do want to, you know, as a woman, I was thinking about the domestic abuse aspect.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I think she makes a good point, because that kind of antisocial behaviour that comes with people that commit domestic violence against their partners, for example, the signs are there from a young age. So if you see the kinds of people that go to prisons, they're not publicly educated boys from Chelsea. They tend to be people from lower socioeconomic class. I mean, I think it's like 40% of inmates have a reading level of under the age of 11, right? So these are people that would have low reading abilities or skills. They're not highly educated. So the signs are already there. So there is that question. But for me, now, in this situation that we're in right now, the question is, what is an actual effective deterrent? Because if you have been a victim of domestic violence and you've seen someone who's supposed to serve at least half of his sentence only serve 40% of his sentence, who could potentially come out is not very highly educated, could potentially be homeless and all of that. How are we as society addressing these concerns that would probably incentivise them to commit another crime?
But we're also, you know, we're paying for it. Apparently some of these people, Jonathan, are going to be shoved in hotels. So, you know, it kind of paints a picture now, doesn't it, really, of, you know, these towns across Britain where you've got one hotel over there that's got a load of asylum seekers in it, one hotel over there that's got a load of prisoners in it, and you think, well, hang on a minute, what's going on?
Look, it feeds definitely into this idea that the law and order is falling apart at the seams, and that's a very worrying situation, because if the public lose faith in our police and in our justice system, that only aids and abets the criminals themselves able to prey on the vulnerabilities and the fears of the law-abiding citizens. So I think it is a huge concern that decisions be made today. And it goes back to what Esther was saying when we spoke earlier. This is a choice, and Labour are choosing at this moment in time to scrap the winter fuel payment from pensions. They're choosing, for example, to stop some sale of some arms licences to Israel, who is an ally in the Middle East, which tends to signal to Iran and China that we're willing to weaken an ally in a very precarious part of the world. And then we're now willing to release up to today 1,700, a further 3,000 down the line of people who have committed awful offences, who are likely, in cases, to go on and offend, are busy celebrating it as if it's like, you know, winning the World Cup. It is very worrying. These people have shown, therefore, very little remorse. They've probably not gone through the system to actually improve their education outcomes and skills.
Many of them are being put in hotels because they're just unprepared. So I don't think they were expecting it either.
But where's the deterrent, Susie? Yeah, where is the deterrent now? If you're out on the rob, you can almost guarantee that you're not going to get caught. You know, shoplifting has essentially been decriminalised in a lot of cases in this country at the moment, as it is. But let's think about more serious crimes, knife crime that's taking place, etc. You know, you've got people there. One of the guys that was released there has apparently got 109 previous convictions, was currently in this time because he beat up his ex-partner in the street. He was on remand for a while, so when he worked it out, the 3 weeks he'd spent in actual prison, it equated to the idea that he'd done 40% of his sentence, so he could be allowed out. Well, there's no deterrent for this guy not to just go and do anything again, is there? I mean, what message are we sending here?
Yeah, no, if you're asking me, do I think this is, you know, something that I'm happy about? No, I'm not happy about this. I mean, anyone that's happy about this, it'd be a strange thing to be happy about. This is not a good situation. But the thing is, what is the answer? We've got to reform the justice system.
We've not done Nightingale prisons. You know, we could do that. They were unused during COVID.
I mean, look, we could do that, but just to say, I mean, I actually studied part criminology when I was at university. Yes, part of the thing is, yes, we do need to have deterrence and we do need to have prisons, but we've just spoken about it. Some of these kids come from homes, but before they're out their mum's wombs, their future's decided for them. I'm not cool with that.
No,
we need to have. We need to make sure that we have
a rapidly growing population. So I believe that maybe can we not do both? Can we not do, you know, more preventative stuff, more care stuff, but also acknowledge the fact that we have a massively rapidly growing population here, and therefore you do need more stuff.
Oh, I mean, yeah, this is the failure of successive governments. No questions asked. But I think on the Nightingale's prisons, there's a bit of a logistics issue in the sense that we don't have enough prison staff. That's another thing. It's incredible that we don't have a scheme that naturally funnels people from from the armed forces, for example, into becoming prisoners that actually retains them for longer periods of time. But that's one of the main issues. We actually don't have enough prison staff. You know, they're not pop-up shops. They actually have to have.
I tell you what, I'm desperate for
logistics
is I absolutely love what El Salvador has been doing. I don't care about the negative.
Literally locking
where they've targeted. They increased the army by a third. Therefore they use the army to work with the local police force. They knew the 70,000 people who are affiliated to gangs. They've gone out there, dragged them off the streets, put them into these supermax prisons. I don't care how long those people are in there for, to be perfectly frank, because crime has drastically dropped. And I promise you, there's a reason that man wins with over 80% of the vote. And if Starmer did this in this country, I tell you what, he'd be in power.
But I mean, I just want to say on knife crime, and it's really important because I know we're talking about gangs, but some of this stuff did go up under the Conservatives because things like mentors, youth clubs, you know, community support workers, and they may sound all softy. Yes, we do need. Because you need both, Patrick. You need prisons, you need police, you need to have lines, antisocial behaviour, because ultimately that hits the poor. You've got to be tough on these things, tough on crime and the causes of crime, but you also need to have these other things that actually do work and do bring crime down.
We're gonna crack on. We're gonna crack on. So coming up, tomorrow's front page is at 10:30 p.m. Yes, I'll give you the full analysis from our press pack. But next, the Tory leadership race saw another candidate eliminated today. Mel Stride was booted out of the race by his fellow MPs. Robert Jenrick has topped the ballot. One of his supporters joins me next. Stay tuned.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
My next guest is a composer and film director whose musical journey began at the tender age of 4.5 when he started playing the piano. Under the tutelage of luminaries such as Sir George Benjamin and Sir Harrison Birtwistle, he has honed his craft, primarily grounding himself in the classical world. He's written music in sets of composition in the 24 major and minor keys of the chromatic scale, producing an album which is accompanied by 24 videos, and it's called 24. I'm joined now by Fabio D'Andrea. Fabio, great to see you. Tell me a little bit, I'm a layman when it comes to music, tell me a little bit about how a composer chooses a key and what it means to the composer to have chosen the key.
Sure. Well, I think every musical key, and there's 24 of them, major and minor, they have their own feel. So you could play a piece in, say, C major, which is normally regarded as the simple key, it's all the white notes on the piano. But if you play that piece, say, in A-flat major, it's going to have a very different feel. So I decided to create this project, 24 pieces, again, looking back at our traditions and the history of what composers have done in the past, especially in regards to piano music, and explore every key, see if I could bring out the emotion that you feel from that actual key itself.
Were you fonder of some than others? I imagine, for example, you're not so fond of C because it's too straightforward.
Actually, no, I love all of them. And that's the beauty of music. Every key has its own feel. And some keys are associated with different feelings. So, for example, C major has actually been historically associated with victory. It's quite a victorious feel about it. I love D-flat major. That's quite mellow. But every key has its own special feeling. And sometimes something will just sound different in that one key, and it's meant to be in that key. So for me, this has been a whole exploration of that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Another domino falls in the Tory leadership race. Yes, that's right, as the former Pensions Secretary, Mel Stride, was booted out in the second round, receiving the fewest votes from MPs. So the four remaining candidates are this lot: Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch, Tom Tugendhat and James Cleverly. They will take the campaigns to the Conservative Party conference at the end of the month before being whittled down to two and facing the membership. Now, Robert Jenrick topped the MP's ballot by a significant margin, and I am joined now by one of his backers, Danny Kruger, MP. Danny, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Right, so your man's done all right so far. Why do you think he's so far ahead at the moment?
Well, listen, all the candidates have got support among our colleagues, and whatever happens at the end of this, we're going to have to come behind the winner, and they're all doing well. But I'm pleased that Robert's come top again in the second round. I think it's because he's got two distinct advantages. Because of the position he's taken on migration, remember, he resigned over the Rwanda bill that I'm afraid, in my view, wasn't going to succeed in stopping the boats. He's demonstrated to those voters that we lost to reform that he understands how frustrating they were rightly about the government's failure on migration in the last parliament. But the other advantage he's got is as a very experienced minister, as a very capable and experienced parliamentarian, he can unite our party. He stands for the common ground that brings all Conservatives together. And I think his ability to win reform votes, but also to reassure our centre that he's a decent, respectable Conservative. That's why he's doing so well.
Why is he better than James Cleverly?
Well, listen, I'm not going to make invidious comparisons with Rob's rivals. I think, as I say, he stands for where we need to be, which is the right position on migration, but also with the experience in government.
But why doesn't, just out of interest, but why doesn't James Cleverly? Because, James Cleverly was at the Home Office. He's had a relatively similar career
Patrick, you'll understand, I'm not going to start denigrating other colleagues. I think Rob is the best of the candidates for the time we've got. All four people who are still in this race are very good Conservatives. They would be good leaders, and I'd be proud to follow any of them. But I think Rob's the right one for our time at the moment.
OK, all right. So what's his tactics to victory going forward then? So we've got the Conservative Party conference. Do we know how that's going to play out? I've heard a few different things about this. They're going to all try to, or be told to, do something every single day of the conference. Do we know how that's going to go?
We don't really know. I mean, it's the conversation that's going on with the party at the moment. I think the good news is there is going to be maximum exposure. I mean, the danger has been, I think, before that there was too much anxiety that they'd be disagreeing with each other in public. I think a bit of disagreement's legitimate. Frankly, the party members deserve to see the rivals, argue with each other politely on stage. That, I understand, will happen in some form. They'll have the opportunity to make speeches. They'll probably be interviewed. And there's going to be loads of opportunities to get out and about on the fringe around the conference. So I think there will be. It'll be what we really believe in, which is a proper party democracy with the members given the chance to interact with their potential leader, test them out and have real conversations about the future of the party.
What do you think is going to be the big issue as far as Robert Jenrick is concerned? Because, I mean, Keir Starmer's not got off to a particularly good start. He's down, I think I'm right in saying now, about minus 25 when it comes to popularity ratings, which is remarkable, really, because we started, I think, on +6. So, there's quite a lot for him to go at here. There is a real chance of actually having, despite this whopping great big majority, a one-term Labour government, if anything so far is to go by. So, what's Rob going in on day one? He looks across that dispatch box and says Prime Minister, and then he kicks off at Keir Starmer. What is it?
Well, listen, that's a very good challenge, because you're totally right, and I'm pleased to hear you say it. I totally think this Labour government, it doesn't deserve the majority it's got, that's for sure. It didn't win it, and you've seen from the way they've carried on in the couple of months they've been in how weak their government really is. So the point that Rob's already been making very, very strongly is that they've lied to the British people about their intentions on tax and now on this pensioner fuel allowance. And they are clearly going to fail on the overriding mission that any government has at the moment, which is to get control of migration and to boost our economy, get productivity going again, reduce taxes to boost enterprise. Those are the things that I think as Conservatives we should be most concerned to see happen. And it's clearly not going to happen under Labour. I think Rob is going to be able to take that battle to Keir Starmer very robustly, while also recognising, frankly, the public don't really believe Conservatives. And we've got a big mountain to climb in terms of rebuilding trust in our party. So I hope that they'll do it in a way that conveys seriousness, conveys our understanding that we've got to change. So we have to change as a party. But I think we can do that. And I do think the public will be looking for an alternative to Keir Starmer very soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, the latest polling that I have seen when it's in terms of Keir Starmer going head-to-head with any of the Tory candidates, so not just Robert Jenrick, any of them at the moment, he is way ahead of them. So that is an issue. You know, if I was someone who was on the fence about whether or not to vote Tory or whatever, I would maybe be having a look at this and thinking, well, hang on a minute, none of this lot actually are much cop, maybe.
Well, listen, the public don't know what these candidates are like in that role yet. Quite naturally, you know, let's not pretend we're more important than we are. We've just lost an election. The focus is on Labour. They don't know these people, these Conservative candidates well. What we've got to do, and it might take a little while, is to demonstrate that we're a serious, sober, but very robust opposition to Labour. And I'm confident that within a few months, we'll be in a position to properly get the public's attention once again and turn the focus on Labour's failings. I think Rob Jenrick will be the man to do that. He's got the resilience, he's got the expertise, he's very, very good in the House of Commons, good in the media. And fundamentally, and most importantly of all, he's got the right ideas. He understands how the country has changed over the last 10 years. He understands the realignment in our politics to deliver this huge vote to reform while also losing votes in the centre. So I think he's the man who can construct a winning coalition again. But it is going to take time. It's going to take very hard work. I think he's the man to do it because the country urgently needs a better party than the one we're getting in government at the moment.
And this goes for any candidate, by the way, not just Robert Jenrick, but, you know, you have to look at it at the moment, and some of the early policies are probably just the opposite of what Labour's done, right, which is not a bad start, really, even when it comes down to things that might seem frivolous, but I don't think are things like, you know, reversing a ban on smoking in pub gardens, for example. That would play very well. So, you know, there's fertile ground there for whoever comes in, I think, to be at the helm of the Tory party going forward. But, Danny, all the best. Thank you very much, especially at this late hour in the evening. So all the best. Danny Kruger there, MP. All right. So you've heard it there. He thinks Robert Jenrick is obviously the right man for the job. Who do you think, out of interest? We're going to have a few weeks to decide, aren't we? But can you see Donald Trump and Kamala Harris? Well, which one of them is going to be in the White House next? They're going head-to-head in their first presidential debate. That'll be live on GB News overnight tonight. The one and only Tom Harwood's presenting that. It's called America Decides, Trump versus Harris, and it's live at 2 a.m. Coming up, though, I have got the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, and we've got the old Greatest Britain at Union Jackass. Oh, yes, and can you tell me what's happening here, please? I'll reveal all very shortly. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. A cold spell of weather to come through the rest of this week. A particularly cold northerly wind will develop throughout the country overnight tonight, and that will bring with it some blustery showers as well. The air is coming from the Arctic, hence why it's quite so cold. We've got low pressure up to the north and east of the UK, so that's brought some very windy weather across northeastern areas of Scotland through this afternoon. That will move away to the east, though, overnight, and so it will turn a little bit calmer for these areas, but still quite a cold wind through much of the night and frequent showers across north and western areas. A bit more shelter further south and east, temperatures widely in the single figures. So it will be a chilly start to the day on Wednesday, but frost will be limited because we do still have quite a strong breeze around. And the winds will remain quite strong across northern areas of Scotland in particular. Some of these showers may start to fall as snow over parts of the Grampians as well, just over the highest mountains. That'll be the first snow we've seen in quite a few months. And some of the showers moving into northwestern areas of England, parts of Northern Ireland, could bring some hail, possibly some lightning and thunder. A drier start to the day, though, for more southern and eastern areas of the UK. But as we head towards lunchtime, cloud will develop further inland, and some of these showers could spread into parts of more southern and central areas of England, as well as eastern areas of Scotland into the afternoon. But I think the most frequent showers will continue, particularly across northwestern England, northern areas of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's going to feel cold as well. well. These are the maximum temperatures. Temperatures will feel closer to the single figures, though, with the strength of that northerly wind. Another chilly start to the day to come on Thursday. A frost potential as well, grass and air frost. And showers will be more frequent across the more northern and eastern coasts as we head into Thursday afternoon. So a slightly drier day for some northwestern areas, but still some further showers to come. Looks a little bit drier and warmer by Friday, and turning a bit warmer into the weekend as well. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. It's time to bring you the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. So let's do it. Right, we're going to start you with the Daily Mail. They've gone straight down the line with this. They said, who voted for all this? After just 68 days, Starmageddon. Prisoners soaked with celebratory bubbly. One vows he's a lifelong Labour voter. Another was greeted by friends in a Lamborghini. All on the day that Starmer's MPs voted to axe winter fuel cash for 10 million pensioners. OK, next, the front page that we're going to go to is The Guardian. PM faces calls to aid the poorest as winter fuel cuts are approved. Dozens of Labour MPs refuse to back the plan targeting pensioners. Excuse me. The next paper we're going to be having a look at now is The Eye. Starmer and Reeves to push ahead with cuts after facing down rebel MPs. The Labour leadership is ready to pursue more contentious spending and tax decisions after defeating a rebellion on cutting winter fuel payments. It's interesting, that, isn't it? Because it does really seriously lend itself to the idea that if those 53 MPs, Labour MPs who'd abstained, had voted against it, Starmer then couldn't have slapped the whip off all of them because he wants to do more. And that would have reduced his majority massively, and that would have weakened him. So they did have the power to potentially stop this today, and genuinely decided not to, those MPs. The Express, Daily Express, MPs revolt over Starmer's shameful scrapping of pensioner payments. So this is a cross-party selection of MPs that the Express had brought together for their crusade, which is save winter fuel payments. Not again, well, I don't think they can win that, unfortunately, but united we stand in winter fuel fight. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph. President poised to lift Ukraine missile ban. So Joe Biden is apparently poised to lift a ban on British Storm Shadow missiles being fired into Russia by Ukraine. So the president is considering changing his policy after it emerged that Iran was arming Russia with ballistic missiles that could be used in Ukraine within weeks. It is a worrying potential escalation.
How much do you want to bet that just before the election somehow this Ukraine war would be settled?
Do you think?
Well, that's the whole point of escalating and arming Ukraine, to actually go into Russia proper, to try and give them as much leverage to get the best deal. But again, this is why I say when you politicize things like the Ukraine war, instead of suing for some sort of peace as soon as possible, you make it a political issue. So you make it revolve around the American election cycle. And that's what I feel uncomfortable with. How many thousands of lives have had to have been needlessly lost because we're now playing politics?
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel particularly comfortable about British missiles
going into Russia. Well, yeah. Russia. I mean, the next thing you're going to see is Putin live on air.
Well, because that affects all of us. I don't want to see Putin own Ukraine. I don't want to see Putin get any ground in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I don't want... But I also don't think I want British missiles being fired at Moscow.
I differ to you.
Go on, yeah,
I've got no issue with it. I personally think that you have to show strength, and for too long we've a bit appeased and apologised, almost made the mistake of a 1930s kind of approach where we just hope that the bad guys would eventually learn to stop. And so if it's going to help Ukraine make the case that they're willing to fight to the bitter end, if it's going to put more pressure internally on the Russian people upon Vladimir Putin, if it's going to make sure we can take out some of the military targets that are being in Russia that are firing into Ukraine and using, obviously, Iranian-backed missiles, then I'm all for it.
Go on, yeah.
No, I was just saying, the positive, I'm just reading this story in The Guardian, but just the positive for me, I've done quite a lot just working with Iranians in this country who have had to live through there aren't words actually for how awful the Iranian government is. But for me, anything that just exposes how evil that government is, you know, torturing, killing children, torturing women, you know, hanging people, you know, every third day because, you know, women had their hair out and all of this, you know, and there was a whole time when actually the papers weren't talking about it and the government here wasn't. And so the positive for me is that this does expose, you know, Iran, and I like that, you know, David Lammy and the Americans are putting tougher sanctions on them, you know, which this is things that should have happened 2 years ago. So, you know, there are positives, you know, in this, but, you know, it's also scary, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, it is. It is, and it is you know, it's the potential for escalation. You know, I absolutely take your point, Jonathan, and there is very much a case for that, and I think it is a popular.
And I acknowledge the risk, by the way, of doing such. You are going to, you know, I do acknowledge the risk.
Trade-off, isn't it?
You know, I say this from the comfort of a sofa, not someone who serves in armed forces that might have to actually see brave men and women of our own nation, God forbid, have to engage in military conflict and therefore risk their lives and their families having to deal with the impact of that. So again, I acknowledge my sort of privilege almost in this situation of saying that as someone who's not on the front line, but I do think we have to show strength and
I
back
think as long
Ukraine
as we
to the
get
bitter
some
end.
kind of deal soon, I just, you know, I'll just want to see it over with. And, you know, I'll be brutally honest about this. I want to have to stop spending taxpayers' money over there. I do. You know, we've got a lot going on over here as well. I get that there is a necessary element to it at the moment. I'm not trying to slag that off. But what I am saying is I would quite like it to be an end to that quite soon.
Well, it's never a really good headline when you see, like, you know, the government has approved £6 billion in funding and then you're taking away winter fuel payments.
Well,
so
exactly.
I guess there is that element as well, not having to have headlines and be like, but what about them?
Yeah. Let's just whiz ourselves over to the Daily Mail, because this actually ties in with the Tory leadership race to an extent, because it says who voted for all of this. They say Starmageddon. They rattle off a few things that Starmer's done, all of which we have already covered at length on this show. Pensioners, fuel allowance being slashed and the prisoners being released as well. There is a case to say who voted for any of this, because I don't think anyone did vote for any of this, Susie, and this is a bit of a problem for Keir Starmer, isn't it?
Well, look, I don't think anyone did vote for this, but at the same time, you know, if you come into government, interestingly, like the Conservatives did in 2010, and you have a difficult, you know, economic climate, you know, who voted for this? Well, I didn't see all the Tories, you know, campaigning against those cuts when all of those things happened, you know. And so people didn't maybe vote for this. But at the same time, I would say, again, you know, these aren't Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Jonathan Reynolds, these aren't decisions they want to make. They have the financial situation that they have. They have to make tough decisions. I know that's what everyone's hearing, but that's the facts, you know. And so ultimately, but at one point, and I think it is important to say this, Keir is going to need to move into gear of hope, change, vision, and that is going to need to come. But I am going to say that I think it is going to come. Well, you know,
you had to see it.
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, just let me
stick around to see that.
Yeah. Let me ask Jonathan this, because, you know, in light of the fact that Keir Starmer's approval ratings have nosedived quite significantly, quite astonishingly, actually. We do see here the Tory leadership race, Jenrick and Badenoch surge in the leaders' race. So who are you backing at the moment? Obviously, former Tory MP and former deputy chairman of the Tory party. Who are you?
Oh, hilariously, Patrick, I always think a former MP has absolutely no real sway nor interest to anyone. But look, obviously, I was co-running Priti Patel's leadership campaign. Yeah. Obviously, sadly, we weren't able to succeed. It looks clear. I thought that going into this week, James Cleverly had the momentum. I expected a Cleverly Jenrick final two.
God forbid.
I think it now looks like it'll be a Badenoch Jenrick final two. And if that is the case, I will be lending my vote to Robert Jenrick, who I firmly believe has been able to bring together a broad coalition of Conservative MPs from across the party. You know, Victoria Atkins to Mark Francois, that is certainly a gulf to bridge in terms of the old sort of left and right within the Tory party. Obviously, he took a very principled position when it came to immigration and resigned from his position because he wanted to see more both on legal and illegal, specifically the Rwanda bill. But more importantly, I saw firsthand what Robert did when he was in the housing, communities and local government role. Something like Kidsgrove getting 17.6 million through the town deal, building more homes than any, I think, Tory housing minister had done previously throughout 300,000 homes. These are issues that are going to matter. These are issues that are going to grow the economy.
He also did have to resign because he sat next to a Tory donor and there was a whole dodgy thing that went on there, which was all in the newspapers.
Who do you
I massively question his integrity.
Yeah, but
I don't know any of them, but he's the one.
The cake. This is the thing we always talk about. Like, you know, we had a Labour donor having access to number 10 just because he gave the party £500,000. I think whenever we see instances of this uncomfortable relationship between politics and power, rich people basically buying access, we always say, oh, that makes this person a hypocrite. That's baked into the cake in our politics.
No, I don't agree. I don't think you can have that. I'm sorry.
No, I don't agree with it, but I think
one of the great things about this country is we do not have high levels of corruption, and I don't think it's okay. What Jenrick did,
yes, we do.
If it came out in the news again, people would be like,
hang on a second. We've
James
had
Cleverly would be...
Lord Ali, is it? Who's got
Lord Ali had the access to number 10, a AAA pass, which meant that you could walk around.
Who's the
and we don't know what
guy at the
meetings.
moment with the
Alan
NHS?
Milburn, the former Secretary of State for Health, who's now got millions in a private healthcare system, getting access to
civil service as well.
Yeah. I'm not saying, sorry, just so you know, I'm not sitting here defending. You're asking me. Can I just say? You're asking me about Jenrick, and I'm just saying to you, I don't think he's a man of good character. I'm not a Tory, so I don't get a vote. I wouldn't vote for him. Right. James Cleverly, on the other hand, who I've met just on one occasion, long conversation with him, interestingly about Iran when he was Foreign Secretary. Got a lot of respect for James Cleverly. If I was a Conservative, I'd give him my vote. Right. Personally, I think he's the best of the bunch, but, you know, I don't get a vote.
It's interesting to see, because I think one of the things to consider, as I'm sure they are considering now, is, right, look, you have to imagine it's Starmer versus X at the dispatch box. Who gives Starmer the biggest headache? And that's what you obviously think is Jenrick.
But look, I think there's arguments to be made. James Cleverly is an extremely personable individual, very likeable individual, and I think therefore has almost a Boris personality quality about him. I think when it comes to Kemi Badenoch, or Badenoch,
I'm not sure that's a compliment. Boris-like personality.
Well, no, I think it actually is, because I saw the cut-through in places like Stoke-on-Trent North, like people flock to him like I've never seen anything before. With Kemi Badenoch, she represents, I think, change in a real way. She's extremely punchy. She's long held beliefs on very core values and issues. I think that her versus Jenrick final two will be a very tight race, but I do think that Robert will be able to bring together a broader coalition of the Conservative Party.
All right, well, we're going to have to find out, aren't we? Right now, I've been teasing this clip all night, and here it is. Two Delta airline planes collided into each other on a runway at Georgia Airport just as one was due to take off, and the collision caused one of the aircraft wings to be severely damaged, whilst the other was left with a severed tail. So thankfully, as of now, no injuries have been reported, which I must say I do find quite hard to believe. But the crew and the combined 277 passengers, both of them were fine. That is a bad day out, to be honest with you, if you're one of those.
It's been happening more. I mean, I'm such a nerd. I follow aviation a lot, but this has been happening more and more in the US, particularly.
All right, OK.
I'll go into it later, during the break.
During the break. Coming up, if you don't want to get sued or shot. Coming up, more from my press pack, and my panel will give us their greatest Britain and Union jackass. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
And feelings of stress and anxiety tend to be quite normal for a lot of kids. And if it's normal for the kids, then it affects the parents as well.
Well, it seems that our canine friends could be the cure after new research by the University of Bristol found that dogs are incredibly sensitive to their owners' emotions. OK,
how do we cheat into this? How can your doggy help your family handle stress during this time of the year? Let's go to the Director of Canine Affairs at Guide Dogs UK, Tim Stafford. Tim, we're talking about this as if it's a big revelation, but obviously, you know, a man like yourself, you're well used to this, and you can see when a dog is reacting. What form would that reaction take, do you think?
Yeah, you know what? It's nice when the science kind of confirms what most of us have known for a very long time. Our dogs become members of our family and they come very, very close to us. So it's no surprise that anything that goes on in the family is going to be detected and picked up by the dog. That can be changes in behaviours. It can certainly be the dogs watching our behaviours and starting to mirror those behaviours. But what this research says is that the dogs can actually smell our emotions. It's not just that they're responding to our behavior changes, they're responding to our physiological changes as well, because we smell differently when we start to get anxious. So at this time, there's lots of changes in a lot of families' lives. Kids are going back to school, young people are going to university, parents are having to deal with all of the emotions attached to that. So it's no surprise that our dogs start to detect that too.
GB News, the People's Channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got some more front pages for you. So I'm going to start with the Metro. It's a big Jeremy Kyle story, this. So huge toll on me by Cleared TV Kyle. OK, so suicide not caused by the show. This is the coroner's report into the individual who took their own lives after appearing on the Jeremy Kyle show. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. The Mirror, hand in your phones. Crew's messages examined as BBC probes bullying and cover-up claims. Grief. BBC staff were told to hand over their mobile phones in the Strictly Come Dancing bullying probe. Oh, so glad I don't work there.
It's on the BBC.
OK, good. The Times. Kyiv is to get go-ahead to strike deep into Russia. We've spoken about this. Apparently British-made missiles could be fired into the heart of Russia. Right, so there we go. Look, those are all your front pages. I'm going to just focus on the Metro here, right, and have a bit of a wider discussion about whether or not TV shows like the Jeremy Kyle show were ever morally OK. I will emphasise Jeremy Kyle has been completely clear. There was no link, apparently, at all between this individual's death, who came on the Jeremy Kyle show, took a lie detector test, failed the lie detector test, took their own life a number of weeks later. There's no link between that, the coroner rules, and the fact that he was on the Jeremy Kyle show or anything that the Kyle show did, as it were. But obviously that show is now no longer on air. And that type of TV, the kind of Jerry Springer type TV, really, that started in America and came over here, I think there's a big question mark as to whether or not it's morally OK.
Yeah, I mean, why not? No one is coerced. I mean, as a matter of taste, it's not my thing. I must say that as a caveat. However, I do, like, if we're talking about sort of what's more harmful, social media, without a doubt. I mean, you have 60-something-year-old bald fat men online pretending to be 12-year-old girls and preying on young people. Like, I mean, you have people that are getting abused and completely, like, insulted on a daily basis on social media. That's wrecking their mental health. Going voluntarily on Jeremy Kyle to be yelled at by your toothless relative, for me, is not like, it's just scratching the surface. I don't have toothless relatives, and if they yelled at me, I'll tell them to go to the dentist. So, you know, I have covered all bases, but
all right.
I can't cover that.
So I must confess, Esther, I was an avid watcher when I was growing up as a teenager. I found it amazing entertainment, which is essentially what it was designed for. Look, Jeremy's actually someone I consider a friend, and we know each other well. I've obviously seen the toll it's taken him and stuff like that, and ultimately I'm glad that he has been cleared, because ultimately I do think that it was a quick pile-on to try and essentially claim that there was somehow a link. Clearly, when someone chooses to take their own life, and I've been open about my own mental health struggles and even attempts on my own life when I was a teenager, you know, people are making that from a difficult base, and I think it was lazy to just presume
there's been a lot of,
it was linked to somehow a TV show. I think
there's been a lot of
the individual did choose to go on this show. At the end of the day.
What is it? Duty of care. There's been a lot of misinformation about that, about like sort of the staff.
Yeah, the aftercare.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, he got a clean bill of health before he went on the show.
I don't know. I never watched this programme, and you know, no comments on the guy particularly himself. But I just think we need better as a country. Like, I've worked in schools with kids where bullying destroys lives. People get bullied when they're a teenager, goes all the way with them. You know, suicide, there's massive connections between people committing suicide and bullying. Now, ultimately, I'm not blaming shows like this or Jerry Springer or whatever, but I'm just like, we know the importance of kindness. Kindness is important. And I don't care if it sounds soft, I'm just saying...
No, I don't think it sounds soft.
You know, I don't have a teenage kid myself, but I've worked with teenagers for 20 years. And I'm like, what's the point in us saying we don't want them to behave like this on social media or in school or on the streets if we're going to put people as role models on the TV and say it's OK to treat people like that?
At its height, the Jeremy Kyle show had something like 5 million viewers a day, something like that, from memory. Now, people might fact-check me on that. This is a figure I have recalled from the depths of my memory. But it was one of the most watched daytime television shows every single day.
Modern day version.
For years.
And I don't it's a modern day version of the Colosseum.
There was a demand
to go out and watch them all take
I don't think it was
pieces out of each other. That's what it is.
Yeah,
it taps into a part of human nature which is not good. And actually, I don't think
it's kind of like a jury show. I don't believe all negative. It wasn't like he was going on there encouraging people to like abandon their families or to cheat on their wives or whatever. I think morally it was still trying to get people to be the upstanding citizen. It just had a very sensationalist way of doing it. It wasn't encouraging people to like become addicts.
He should hold people to a better standard of
exactly.
themselves. And by the way, he was open about his own struggles with addiction and stuff like that. So he was actually posing to people questions that he himself has had to...
But how much cooler would it be to say we're going to pick the best Britons and like, pick the best Britons and those we can change.
Shallow people.
We can influence. It's true. I mean, I agree with you.
Stop now. Talking of best Britons, there we go. It's time for today's greatest Britain Union jackass. We've got 2 minutes, so rapido, please.
Esther McVey, for a speech in Parliament calling out Labour's hypocrisy for taking out money, taking away sort of fuel payments for pensioners, but handing out money to train drivers.
OK, strong start. Go on.
John Trickett, because he was the only Labour politician to have some cojones to vote against this disgusting scrapping of the winter fuel payments.
All right, OK, go on.
Idris Elba, all the work that he's done... Exactly, I agree with you. Thank you. Shake hands. But all the work that he's done... Thank you. All the work that he has done to tackle knife crime and to raise that issue. And what if all rich, famous people said, I'm going to use my fame to do something good? And do you know what I mean? Well, there you go. But, you know, and I'm telling you now, that man, in 20 years' time, they'll look back and say he saved many lives because of this campaign.
Arguably should have been James Bond. Yes, right, OK. Today's winner is actually Esther McVey. There you go. All right. But you hadn't persuaded me yet, but now you kind of had. But
I only had...
You don't fancy Idris.
It's too late. I decide them hours in advance. Right, OK. So, who's the Union jackass?
Jess Phillips, which kind of pains me because I actually like her as a person. But she was crying about domestic abuse victims, but suddenly has no problem with the government releasing domestic abusers early from prison. Yeah,
indeed. Go on.
I've gone the Labour Party, Patrick, because not only have they decided to allow pensioners to potentially freeze this winter, but they're also allowing dangerous criminals onto the street early. And we're only less than 70 days into this Labour government. We've got another 4 years of this shower of something still to go.
Okay, about 20 seconds.
OK, I wish I had said the Conservative Party for their hypocrisy, but I'm saying Grenfell, everything that's gone on there, and just still that we haven't had, you know, people brought to justice, you know, for what has gone on there. And I'm just like, you know, it's infuriating.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I mean, actually, to be honest with you, it's very difficult for me to pick. I've gone for the Labour Party, but again, I think I need to wait and just pick them live because it's the way they sell it to me at the moment that really matters. Right, that's it from me. Thank you. It's Headliners next. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. A cold spell of weather to come through the rest of this week. A particularly cold northerly wind will develop throughout the country overnight tonight, and that will bring with it some blustery showers as well. The air is coming from the Arctic, hence why it's quite so cold. We've got low pressure up to the north and east of the UK, so that's brought some very windy weather across northeastern areas of Scotland through this afternoon. That will move away to the east, though, overnight, and so it will turn a little bit calmer for these areas, but still quite a cold wind through much of the night and frequent showers across north and western areas. A bit more shelter further south and east, temperatures widely in the single figures. So it will be a chilly start to the day on Wednesday, but frost will be limited because we do still have quite a strong breeze around. And the winds will remain quite strong across northern areas of Scotland in particular. Some of these showers may start to fall as snow over parts of the Grampians as well, just over the highest mountains. That'll be the first snow we've seen in quite a few months. And some of the showers moving into northwestern areas of England, parts of Northern Ireland, could bring some hail, possibly some lightning and thunder. A drier start to the day, though, for more southern and eastern areas of the UK. But as we head towards lunchtime, cloud will develop further inland, and some of these showers could spread into parts of more southern and central areas of England, as well as eastern areas of Scotland into the afternoon. But I think the most frequent showers will continue, particularly across northwestern England, northern areas of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's going to feel cold as well. These are the maximum temperatures. Temperatures will feel closer to the single figures, though, with the strength of that northerly wind. Another chilly start to the day to come on Thursday. A frost potential as well, grass and air frost. And showers will be more frequent across more northern and...
Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm not saying I don't want to be a mum and I'm not saying I don't want to work, but it's definitely not easy.
It's just really tough for us mums, you know. Our job's never done, our work is never finished, and I think it's this movement, the real out-of-office movement, is something that just really resonates with me, and I think we should all talk more about how much work we do. I think a woman's work is never done, but I just think we all feel guilty. We have that mum guilt, you know. If you're working and being successful, you wish you were at home with the kids, and if you're at home, you're thinking, am I doing enough work?
Yeah, and of course the cost of childcare in this country means that a lot of families just frankly make that decision to have one of the parents stay at home, usually the mum, and they're just being squeezed out of the economy, and that's not good either.
Once you've done your job as a working mum, you come home and you're doing another 8 hours on top of it.
Mothers have a tendency, definitely historically, just to crack on with it.